Hello and welcome back to Debating Metal. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, and my co host is the everlasting Chris K. On this episode, we go back to the 80s. Seems like a theme on this show. But anyway, today we're talking about one of the most unique glam metal bands from that period. Today, we're doing Dokken.
In the mid 80s, Dokken blew up with 3 back to back platinum albums and tons of attention from their connection with horror icon Freddy Krueger. With Don Dokken's melodic vocals, George Lynch's scorching guitar work, and the pounding rhythm section of Jeff Pilson and Mick Brown, Dokken had a style all their own. Dokken has been rockin' since 1978, releasing their newest album just 2 years ago in 2023. With Don Dokken recently hinting at retirement, we decided it's time to look back at all their releases and rank them worst to first.
And stick around to the end where we'll give you our BIG4 Dokken songs. So sit back, relax, and let the debate begin. All right, so Dokken, one of the like we mentioned in the intro, one of the more unique glam bands from the 80s. Unique in terms of specifically Don Dokken's vocal styles, but there's some other unique things about him. George, that the guitar playing combined with Don's vocals, that made it even more unique. And I know you weren't a huge fan, but then you've kind of, like jumped into their fandom a little bit in recent times.
I mean, I'm not I wouldn't say I'm like a fanboy by any means, but I have enjoyed their music quite a bit more. I think it was just I always found that Dawkins' kind of soft vocals didn't really work for me. But as time went on, just hearing the quality of the songs, the songwriting, and then certain select songs really grew on me. Um, yeah, he- it's an interesting thing that I've kind of like picked up on, which I'm sure fans have noticed over the years, is that Don's a bit older than the rest of the band, and has a little bit of a maturity level that I would say a lot of the bands at the time didn't have in the songwriting as well as just being a person, right? Like Don didn't really do any drugs. The rest of the band kind of did. And that kind of shows in the style of songwriting, the way he carries himself, and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, obviously things have changed massively over the years. Like the original band is really nothing. I think George does a little bit of touring with Dokken, just playing select songs at shows. But it's just really kind of an interesting dynamic because like compare Dokken to say some of their contemporaries like Motley Crue or really just about any other hair band at the time, and there's a different sensibility there that is somewhere kind of between like if metal was adopting some of the sensibilities of easy listening in a way.
Okay, I get that. It's no, it's true because those he's just such a different kind of singer,
Hmm.
and that's part of that whole uniqueness thing. It's funny because you bring up the maturity level. Even though he was old, I mean, George Lynch isn't too far behind. He's only 2 years younger, and I
Yeah.
think I think that's the whole thing about the whole band. That just in general, the band was already a little bit older than the rest of their contemporaries that were making it big at the time,
Yeah.
yet they were just as fresh to the scene as the other bands. And I think Jeff Pilson's the youngest. Right now he's 67. Mick Brown is 69. George Lynch is 70. Don's 72. So that's a 5 year difference between the four of them. You
Yeah.
know, five,
But the
right? Yeah.
younger you are, that distance between ages is larger. You know, like
Yes.
if you're 7 and your sibling is 10, then that feels like a giant difference. But the older you get, the less it matters. Yeah.
Right now, so when we're talking about back then in terms of maturity of bands, I mean, Don's, it was rocking at the in the late 70s. A lot of these bands were the Sunset Strip bands were still teenagers
Mhm.
in that time, and all of a sudden, you have a band like Dokken or like Motley Crue, all teenagers in 81, 82. Dokken's already in his mid 20s, that kind
Mhm.
of thing, and so there's a big difference. There's a huge difference, and there you're correct in that there's a maturity in the songwriting, there's maturity in the lyrics, there's a maturity in the kind of breakup songs that Dokken would write compared to other people,
Yeah.
so so this episode and what we're going to talk about obviously is the band Dokken. And they have 12 releases. However, we're going to include a solo album from Don Dokken that kind of just went in the middle there somewhere. It was supposed to be a Dokken album, or it was supposed to be a solo album, and it turned it into they wanted a Dokken album. He said no, whatever it was. I think you have more details on it. It's
He
included, so
intended
we're
to release it as a Dokken album because it's his name, right? Like he was under the impression, I can release it as a Dokken album without the other guys, but they put a stop to that. So there's kind of like you said, there's some bit of in between on it. So I think it's just fair to rate it just because of the similarity. Like he's released some other solo stuff that isn't really the same, but this is right in the vein of the rest of the stuff, and especially with him being the primary songwriter in most of their music, then I think it's fair to put it in this list.
It's funny. Yes, that's his name, but once you have this band, that becomes a corporation. And
Yes, 100%.
so while it may be his name, he couldn't just go around. And I get why they put a stop to it. You just can't go around saying, okay, I'm Dokken. Yes, I'm Don Dokken, but I am the band. You're not the band. You're just Don.
Hmm.
And I think he didn't maybe grasp that at first, but obviously he was legally bound to grasp it at that point. So anyway, so this was your baby in terms of this choice today. So why don't you go ahead and start it off?
Yeah, I just felt like it was a band we haven't really talked about before, so I thought that would be, something a little different. So basically what we do is we start off on the worst, and in this case, I think it probably is the worst album. I had Shadow Life. Shadow Life was I believe the last album with the original lineup. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that was in 1997. And it's man, it's a mess. Everything else in their catalog is some level of uh, hair metal or glam metal. This album is kind of more alternative rock, and it is a strange one. You almost kind of have to look at it as something different, and I think you can get more out of it. It's also very like Tool like. I think the first song, "Puppet on a String," sounds like something that could have come off of like Undertow almost, which is so weird because it just that's that's not Dawkins. It's the only album that used the logo that they have on it, and I think if what I read, and this could be wrong. I'd love for somebody to confirm this out there, but basically Don said we need to change the logo because this doesn't kind of mesh with everything else that we've put out. I put it last because 13 tracks, and I really kind of only liked about three of them. And I'm not talking about like a favorite or anything that I would put on like a playlist. I thought Puppet on the String was interesting. It was kind of cool. I Feel and Hard to Believe. All of those were okay, but this is an album that I will probably never go back to.
Well, that's also my worst, my number 30.
Okay.
Um, and I agree with you on all points. I think in some cases you're giving it too much credit. Um, so I felt that this album was completely uninspired and unmotivated. Um,
Hmm.
if the band already had, problems to begin with, this album was one of those where it's like four guys just showed up, were paid to do their parts, and they left, and they didn't even do those parts that great. That's the way I felt about it. Um,
Yeah, it's very disjointed.
yes, and then on top of that, production wise, it was, I don't know what they were trying to do. Kelly Gray from Queensryche fame is the producer on this album, and no, it's just it's in the middle, and even in fact, it's towards the end of the grunge era. So at this point in 1997, we're already kind of phasing out of grunge and heading back to almost what I would say you have the new wave of American British, the new wave of American heavy metal coming back out, right? Um, you have the whole metalcore scene is starting to pop up. So that's a combination between metalcore and the new wave of American metal. Then you've got new metal, which is taken off. So this is like a reaction to grunge 4 years after the fact, uh,
Yeah.
which is just terrible in my opinion, because it's not, it's meant to sound raw and stripped down, um, and it doesn't work at all. Um, and then you mentioned Puppet on the String, so you thought that Puppet on the String sounds like Tool. I listened to it, and what I got out of it was this almost sounds like some kind of monster, the song. And the drums sound like something off of Saint Anger, the snare drum. It's
You
really
think Metallica ripped off Dokken?
um no.
They were like pumping Dokken, and they were just like,
No,
this
they
is what
were
we're
they,
gonna do,
they were they were pumping they were pumping Winger.
guys.
No, so Puppet on a String, I mean, has a really weird kind of tin can snare drum kind of sound. It's just
Listen to the vocals from Dawn again, and think in the context of Maynard, and I think you'll get what I'm
Oh, I,
saying.
I I I get that part of it, because Don was trying to do all sorts of things. John was trying to make it work, and
Yeah.
it didn't, because they were doing something that was not themselves.
Yep.
None of the four guys, it just wasn't there. I mean, dude, Mick Brown's drumming was just like it. It's still solid because he plays solid drums. He's a good drummer, but it just there's nothing to it, and it's just like, I'm here. Let me just pound away at the drums. It
Yeah.
just completely uninspired. And you were right. First, the only album with that logo. In fact, the album prior to that, Dysfunctional, introduced the new logo, which they still use to this day,
Mhm.
which is similar to the old logo, just a little bit kind of extra, almost like they added almost like a serif to some of the parts of the letters.
Yeah,
But
they kinda stylized it a little bit more. Yeah.
yeah, they extended the D and stuff like that, so they still use that logo today. But yeah, that was my number 13 as well.
Okay. Alright, my number 12 is a more recent album, Broken Bones. I just felt like, you mentioned a lot when you said Shadow Life was uninspired. I feel like Broken Bones was kind of the same. Like, I don't think if you put it in the context of just listening to it, there's nothing that's like egregious like Shadow Life, where it's just this feels out of character or something. It suffers more of the sin of just kind of being boring. I thought Empire was pretty good. and the song Broken Bones. But after that, I mean, that's the beginning of the album, and then after that, I feel like it just kind of trails off. Best of Me sounds like Pearl Jam. Like it. What's the song that Adam Sandler used to parody all the time?
Even flow.
Even Flow. It sounds like Even Flow, like the beginning of it, which is just weird. So 11 tracks, didn't really have any favorites, and I had two songs that I kind of liked, but again, just I think it's better than Shadow Life because it still at least feels like Dokken. And I think if you're a diehard Dokken fan, you'll probably get something out of it. But as somebody who's not, it just was kind of boring to me.
I get that. However, that's not my number 12.
Okay.
um so my number 12 is what I would consider uh it's time to hang it up. And that's heaven comes down. Um
Okay.
they're at a point where this is no longer Doc, and I mean, in the whole, like we were talking about to introduce this whole segment, Don Dokken thinks he is Dokken. Okay. And he forgets that Dokken, the band, the corporation in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, that band, that was something different. What he has now is not Dokken. What he has now is Don Dokken solo. But he's, since he owns the corporation now, he can just call it Dokken. And he uses Dokken as opposed to Don Dokken because there's a bigger name to Dokken.
Yeah.
So Heaven Comes Down, it's just not Dokken. It doesn't, to me, it does add nothing to the legacy of the band. Um, his voice isn't good anymore. He can't play anymore because he can't play guitar because of that surgery, his back surgery that
Yeah.
left him partially paralyzed. Um, So, I mean, the best thing about this album to me was the drum sound. It was, sounds very real. Um, not as uninspired as Shadow Life, but it feels like they're just going through the motions. You have a band. To me, this is not a band. To me, this is four guys getting together. Hey, let's do this. You know, it's to me, it's not a band. But Don's like, hey, like Ozzy had bands. He would always consider them the band, and they would be the band until he fired somebody, or Sharon fired, or whatever you want to call it. But in this particular case, I think these are people that Don knows that, hey, I'm recording this album. This is my band. You want to be part of my band? It's just still, it's I don't know. It doesn't have the same effect to me. It doesn't sound like Dokken, and so that's number 12 for me. I have more to say about other shit later.
Well, I mean, that's my number 11, so I'll kind of give my perspective on that. So, what I do, and this is my general theme for all of these that we do worst to first, is I listen to every song. Um, Good or bad. I listened to the entire album, and it's been a cool experience because I found a lot of stuff that I wouldn't expect to like. Um, that's how I've actually became more of a fan of certain bands. So I do recommend that when you have the time, anybody out there, put on a full record, even if it's one that you've listened to before and you've never really given it much of a chance, maybe the second half or something like that. Like, just listen to the whole thing, and you'll sometimes find some cool stuff. Um, there's a couple notes that I have on this one in particular that you're 100% right. His voice is shot. And it doesn't necessarily feel like a band per se. I think there are some highlights on here though. I thought "Fugitive," which is the main song, is a cool song. I think if it had come out years before when his voice was stronger, it would be better. Or if he had written it for somebody else to play, probably pretty good. Gypsy's okay, but I would not put either of those in favorites. But I do have a song at the very end of the album that I think is actually pretty good. Santa Fe. Um, if you didn't really give that a chance, Kenneth, listen to that one. The vocals are way stronger, so it almost feels like it was recorded in a different section or session. And I actually think it's a legitimately good song. It's softer, so it's probably easier on his voice. So it actually worked. The other thing is, did he forget he wrote a song called I Remember that came out on a different album? How do you forget I Remember? Because on Lightning Strikes Again, there's another song that is better called I Remember. So he has two songs called I Remember. What the hell? So, yeah, it's for me, it's number 11. I think it's maybe a toss up between Broken Bones and this one, but I think that me actually really enjoying that song Santa Fe puts this one just ever so slightly above it.
Okay, I'll give you that. I put it this way. I couldn't get to the end of the album. I don't. For everyone that's listening out there, I don't have as much time as Chris has to listen to everything. So, I have a very complicated teenage daughter life. Okay, so for anybody out there that's listening who has teenage kids and they're doing any sort of extracurricular activities, you probably know exactly what I'm going through. My wife and I are basically we're taxi cabs, we're chauffeurs, we are Ubers, if you want to call it that, for today's lifestyle. That's what we do, and it's literally 5 days a week job doing this, and I'm not complaining one iota because I love my kids to death. All five of them I love. Three of them already grown up. These two are my teenagers that are here with me, and I wouldn't trade anything in the world to do something different because it's really I enjoy it. However, for situations like this, it limits my time to listen to this stuff. So I don't get to listen to front to back like you get to do. Um, However, I do try to get through as many songs as possible when I do have a chance, but sometimes I just can't make it to the end of the album. So I may have missed this one song. Um, I apologize to those people listening out there. However, I will give it a chance and I may remark on it in a later date.
Yeah,
um,
just give this the one song a chance. I would not necessarily recommend the rest of the album.
No, that I heard. Now, talking about when heaven comes down. Wait, is that what it's called? Yeah, right. Oh, heaven comes down. Um, the uh, the album definitely has a different bunch of guys. John Levin's the only person, but you got Chris McCarville on bass and BJ Zampa on drums. So it's not even the same band that recorded the previous album, Broken Bones.
Mhm.
Then again, it is what a 10-year difference, something to that effect. You know, so or 11 years. So John Levin was there before, and Sean McNabb was on bass prior. So um, it's and then Jimmy DeGrasse was playing drums as a studio musician for Don. So very different band. Um, so to me, that's just like hey, let me call this guy I know, and whatever. So that's why I felt that way about it. That was your number. What now? Number
That was
10.
number no,
No,
that was
number
number
11.
11. Yep.
Number 11 for you. Okay, so my number 11 is Broken Bones. Um,
So we
and
just swapped them.
yeah, we just swapped them. It's basically the thing with Broken Bones, and I want to say just that whole group of albums that happened around that. I don't want to say the same time period because obviously they all they came out in different years. But Broken Bones was 2012. Lightning Strikes Again is 2008. So that's a 4-year disparity. Hell to Pay is 2004. So it's like every 4 years at this point he's popping out albums. That group of albums right there, I believe all the you can even add Long Way Home. That group of albums, there's a similarity to them. some better than others, as we are going to talk about. But there's definitely a similarity. That to me, those albums sounded like one band because they pretty much were, for the most part, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and and John Levin was the biggest thing. He was the steady guitar player for Don, and I mean, Lightning Strikes Again. That was the same band for Lightning Strikes Again, the same band for Hell to Pay, I think it was. It changed on Broken Bones. That's where you can start to see things change a little bit. So that's why I put it at number 11. For me, it was ideas that were pretty much lather, rinse, repeat. Um,
Yeah.
and that was, I think, the result of, I had this band that was together for a few years, maybe 8-10 years at this point. And then there was a change. Mick Brown left, and now all of a sudden there's a dynamic change because Mick Brown was pretty important to Don. I mean, think about, Mick Brown was with Dokken since the beginning up until this point, so definitely a major dynamic change. uh,
Mhm.
in term in terms of rhythm section, in terms of just the dynamics of the band. Whatever friendship he may or may not have had with Mick, basically was, it was no longer that in the studio. Sometimes, because Mick Brown wrote a couple songs from time to time. Um, don't tell that to Don though, because Don thinks he wrote every damn Dawkins song from the beginning. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. um, and so definitely a different dynamic. So Broken Bones has that reflection. It's the same style of songs, but there's definitely a kind of going through the motions, lather, rinse, repeat thing, like I mentioned already. So there's
Yeah.
that part of it.
No, I mean, it's kind of the gist of what I said about it too.
Right.
It's one of those albums that just uninspired, but like I said, I think if you're a real diehard fan, you'll probably get something out of it though. My number 10 is Hell to Pay. Um, what's crazy to me is like for an album that's called Hell to Pay, it's really soft. Um,
I did
it's
notice that a lot of these albums have a lot of soft songs
a
on them.
lot of ballads. So I didn't hate it, but I also um, didn't really enjoy a whole lot of it. Um, I would say there were five, maybe I think it was four songs. No, five songs that I thought were okay. Don't Bring Me Down, Prozac Nation, Better Off Before, Can You See, and Care for You. Most of those are ballads. There again, it's another case of just kind of being a little bit uninspired. Um, but I think if you do find something to really enjoy on this album, it is the ballads. They are the strong suit there. I think that is really what Don's strong suit is as he gets older. Um, there are some decent riffs, and it's just the mixture of um, not feeling that early level of excitement or energy that's no longer there. That just it just doesn't allow for it to be just exciting to listen to. So it's just kind of middling. It's I still think it's better than Broken Bones, but uh, middling.
Is it in the middle, or is it just like a Yingling beer?
Sure.
Probably not either.
Yeah.
Um, my number 10 is also Hell to Pay.
Oh
And
wow.
I'm just so here's the funny thing. What I said, you mentioned Prozac Nation as being one of the better songs. Here's my problem with a song like Prozac Nation. Okay, if you listen to the lyrics of Prozac Nation, it is about Prozac and drugs and pills and all the things that people go through in life, when it comes to trying to, um, get through the day, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
Um, and that is essentially what my problem is with the song and the album.
You
Okay.
needed Prozac to get through the album.
No. What 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 it is to me is, if like I literally wrote an album with a song called Prozac Nation is not going anywhere. It proves there's nothing clever with his lyrics. Okay. And so what I mean by that is, like, someone who is clever with their lyrics could have written the same exact song and had lyrics that indicated everything he wanted to indicate, but yet made it where you never mention the word Prozac, and you don't have that kind of, I don't know what I don't know the word I'm trying to think of, but it doesn't come across the same way.
Well, it hits you over the head. Like
Yeah, exactly.
it doesn't nobody uses metaphor anymore, and that's what pisses me off about modern writing a lot of times. I could go into, I mean, if you want me to have a separate podcast about how much I hate modern comic writers, uh, let me know, 'cause I go on for hours and hours. Um, but that's part of my problem is there's so many writers that I swear they just sit at their computer and they go like, "Oh man, this is good. Nobody's ever gonna see this coming." And it's the same bullshit, and it's just written out very clearly for you. And yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, he's not using metaphor. There's no cleverness to the lyrics. It's just, it is what it is. Read it. I mean, hear it for what it is.
Right. And mind you, Don's lyrics have never been the most metaphoric. Um, but at the same time, it's never been so blatantly obvious either. You
Yeah.
know, um, he's always been a storyteller, and I give you that. But even in storytelling, there's a way to speak, a way to sing, a way to write lyrics that just doesn't come across as, I had a bad day because I didn't take my pills today, blah blah blah, that kind of shit, right? And it's like, come
That
on,
sounds
listen.
like kind of like Johnny Cash lyrics. I had a bad day.
But you see, he has such a uniqueness. He could get away with that shit.
Oh, I know he's great.
You know what's funny? You're talking about Johnny Cash. Little brief side. My wife goes, "What the fuck made him so good?" And I'm like, "Well, I, I
Charisma.
don't, I don't have enough time to talk about that right now." But
Just
I told her
pure unadulterated charisma.
it was charisma, and it's like, dude, as soon as you hear that voice, you know who
Yeah.
it was, right? I mean,
Mhm.
he had a very unique voice. There was charisma, but there was, just the song choices, like, Delia's Gone, where
Mhm.
he's talking about shooting his wife. Basically, Folsom Prison Blues. I mean, he literally, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die.
He just
Uh,
picked a different target to shoot in each song.
yeah, Ring of Fire. I mean, it's just those. He had a uniqueness about him.
Yeah.
Maybe but then again, I mean, not every lyric was his either. You know, so he had songwriters.
No, yeah, he was smart enough to know when he heard something that worked, and he had ability, kind of like Ozzy. Ozzy could
Mhm.
hear something that he was like, okay, I know this works. You know,
Right.
um, so
So I
sure,
was I just happened to catch the last thing on Johnny Cash. I just happened to catch a quote or something like that from Trent Reznor, and he said that when he heard Johnny Cash do his version of "Hurt," he said he cried, was the first thing, and he said the song is no longer mine. He goes,
hmm,
this song. He goes, it blew him away. And so I was like, I thought that's freaking amazing that someone can
yeah.
sit there. They wrote the song, and it's no longer theirs because of the way that this other person performed it. And that happens, like, I'm sorry, but you know what? Am I Evil is no longer Diamond Heads. It belongs to Metallica, that kind of thing. But anyway, let's move on to Dokken. You're at number 9.
All right, so my number 9 is Long Way Home. Um, so it's I think it's significantly better than the albums that we just talked about. I think we're kind of past the worst of the worst. Um, I did like the song "Sunless Days." I thought that was actually pretty cool. There was a time under the gun, and I thought were all really good. And one thing I will say is it is a little bit of a regression. Um, you're sorry, you're coming off of um, you're coming off of Erase the Slate, where that is kind of the band more returning to form after Shadow Life. So Shadow Life comes out in 1997, Erase the Slate comes out in 1999, and then Long Way Home is 2002. So pretty rapid releases of these albums, and I think we talked about Shadow Life being the worst. Long Erase the Slate. I mean, the name kind of says it all. Like, oh shit, we're back in a way, right? And then Long Way Home comes out, and I think it's not quite as good as that one, but it has some good stuff. That being said, um, again, I think all the ballads are really quite nice. It sits for me below everything else that we're going to talk about by a fair margin.
I agree because that's also my number nine.
Great.
And it's because if you look at it, if you break it down, okay, look at everything other than Shadow Life, right? Everything from 1999 and older, okay. There's like it's almost like a dividing line. The millennium, the year 2000 is like everything that's newer from 2000 on is much different than,
Yeah.
and I can't even say much different, much less inspired, if you want to put it that way. Just doing the same thing that they've done. It's kind of formulaic, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
And Long Way Home is essentially the beginning of that, which is a shame because they're coming off of Erase the Slate, which is a better album, especially after Shadow Life, right? And you had a whole new beginning. Literally, they erased the slate, like you were mentioning, and then they come out with Long Way Home, and it's like, oh, okay, we're just gonna go back to the old formula. Better than Shadow Life, but not up to standards of that erases slate. It's not up to the standards that erased the slate set just a few
Yeah.
years earlier. For me, the one song that stood out to me on Long Way Home was Sunless Days. For whatever reason, that song had a very similar sound to like a Black Label Society song.
Okay.
There was something about the guitar work that kind of gave it a BLS kind of vibe.
Interesting. Okay. Obviously in agreement with you there. So all right. For number 8, I have Erased the Slate. We were just talking about it. I think it is a bit of a return to form, following, they had Dysfunctional and then Shadow Life. But it's not quite there, right? And the big change, right? You still have Jeff Pilson, you still have Mick Brown, but the big change is you have Reb Beach on guitars, Reb Beach of Winger fame. Um, he does a great job, I think, overall, and fits pretty well in. But it's not the classic Dokken lineup. So there is a bit of a change, and by no means is this a bad album. I think it has some really good stuff on it. Erase the Slate and Change the World, I think, are really good songs. My other ones that I would put in that I liked were Maddest Hatter, Voice of the Soul, Crazy, Mary Goes Round, and Little Brown Pill, which is the bass solo at the end. I'm counting that as a song because it's a hidden track, but um, it really shows off the quality of Jeff Pilson's bass work. It's a lot of fun. And so that it's just that it's not bad. It's a return to form in a lot of ways, and it's kind of an induction of Reb Beach into the band. Unfortunately, it's the only album with him. So, um, it should. If things had worked out a little different and he stayed with the band and Jeff Pilson stayed, then maybe the chemistry would have been different. But it worked out how it did.
Yeah, you are correct. And for me, I'm not going to put Erase Slate there just yet. For me, number 8 is Don Dokken's solo album, Up from the Ashes.
Okay.
Um, for me, it was basically that Up from the Ashes proved that he couldn't do it alone. I mean, lyrically, it's Dokken, right? It's his style, it's his singing, his voice, is his lyrics. But musically, it fell just a little bit short. Um, Trying to put together, the old band kind of thing, bringing back Peter Baltus. Um, he brought in his friend Mickey D to play drums. It's just to me um, didn't work. Um,
Okay.
but that's not to say that the songs are bad. Like this to me, like we're at the point now where we're kind of like in the middle, right? Between the front half of their career and the back half of their career. And this album to me is kind of that dividing line because when he put this album out, it was because things were, dysfunctional in the band. Ha ha ha. And so he kind of had to do something and he wanted to put out an album and, wanted to do it all on his own, like he tried, I mean, look, this is 1990. So put it that way. Let me kind of start that thought again real quick. The band disbanded after the Monsters of Rock tour in 1988. And so now he's going out there and he says, well, I'm going to do my own thing. Can't play with George, can't play with Jeff, can't play with Mick, but uh, Mick Brown. So I'm going to, put this band together. And he went out, like we said early in the beginning, he thought he could name it Dokken. They're like, I don't think so. Um, but it was one of those things. It proved that the original band that had just broken up 2 years earlier was a really good band, and he couldn't do it on his own. Um, so, and as we evidenced later, when they got back together, they had some good stuff, and then as they broke apart again, it kind of went through the motions. So, for me, I mean, the album had some highlights. I'm not going to say it didn't, um, but it was again to me one of those things where it's kind of like, yeah, I've kind of heard this before, but better in other formats, in other versions, if you want to put it that way. There were better Dokken songs. So that's my take on it. I have no highlights of any particular song. I mean, the single that it had was it Mirror Mirror? I think it was the first single.
I
That
honestly don't know what was released as a single.
I think it was Mirror Mirror because I think I have a CD single on that.
Well, so there were music videos for "Stay" and "Mirror, Mirror." I don't know which one would have been the first single.
Stay is the other song. That was song because
Okay.
Stay's the ballad, right?
Mhm.
Right. That's what I thought. So yeah, so Mirror Mirror is a little bit more up tempo. I believe that was the first one that went to radio. And then when they decided to come out with their second song, it was Stay. So looking at the words or the titles of these songs, is he has Don has a theme about all his his lyrics and his song titles and we obviously know that his album titles are previous songs, as evidenced by somebody's album titles that they were songs from different albums prior.
Yeah,
So
that was something I picked up on while we were doing this was, interesting, like, you have, which was the first one? "Long Way Home,"
right,
you
Long
know,
Way Home,
and then
and
"Hell to Pay," was his song or no?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, "The Lightning Strikes Again," and then "Heaven Comes Down." So, interesting enough that he just kept, "Oh, we'll make this an album now," you know?
Anyway, oh, you know what song I was thinking about? I'm sorry. Um, I know Mirror Mirror and Stay were singles, but I was thinking of the song that's on Dysfunctional. But we won't talk about that till we get there.
Okay.
But anyway, um, That was my number 8. So, what is your number 7?
Well, you said we weren't there yet, but we are to Dysfunctional. That's my number 7. Um, so, Dysfunctional is a really odd album in the Dokken catalog because it is a pretty marked change from what they were doing before. Um, this brings in some psychedelic elements. It is more of a hard rock album than uh, Glam by any means, and it is pushing some more experimental aspects of the band. Like I don't really know what kind of inspired this because it doesn't. It's not something that like okay, if it's album coming out in 1995, it doesn't sound like 1995 to me. It's a strange one. If you told me this was Dawkins' album from 1976, I would be like, okay, sure, but obviously that doesn't make sense. But it's very strange. That being said, I kind of like it. The, I think trying something different kind of worked. I don't there's nothing that I just dislike on the album per se. There were 2 songs that I thought were better than everything else, Nothing Left to Say and Long Way Home. I thought both of those were pretty good. And then I liked The Maze, Too High to Fly, and Shadows of Life. But overall, like I think you can kind of hit this from beginning to end, and it's kind of an enjoyable experience. Um, but it's a weird album. It's a strange one in the catalog.
I hear you. I hear you. It's not there for me yet. I have it a little bit higher, in
Okay.
fact. Number 7 for me is Breaking the Chains. So this for me is the dividing line. Um,
Okay.
because now you're getting into all the good albums for the most part, what I think are the good albums. Um, and so Breaking the Chains is the beginning. Um, it's where it all started for Dokken, but it's not necessarily the best, or it's not like, to me, that album doesn't get a band signed in out of LA, which is what happened. I mean, essentially, the band begged for the second album, and because they were going to get dropped. Breaking the Chains didn't really go anywhere. Breaking the Chains, the song itself was pretty good, but the rest of the songs, cheesy, 80s glam metal kind of stuff, and no major good ballad on the album, and it was make or break. I mean, basically, they begged the record company to give them another shot, and they hit pay dirt after that. But Breaking the Chains, to me, while I said, the song itself is good. Paris is Burning. I don't understand. And we were going to talk about this when we talk about the album, so we'll refer to it a little bit. There's 2 different versions of the album. The original album had Burning in Paris on it, studio version. Then
It
they
was called Paris on the original version.
right. So, but then they had a studio version, and then when they released the American version 2 years later, um, it's a live version. So it's very strange to me. It's um, was it remixed or re-recorded? It was remixed.
Re-recorded entirely.
Oh, was it
Um,
re-recorded entirely?
Yep. The
Okay.
vocals are different. The guitars are different. Juan Crousier played on the second version, but he did not play on the 81 version. So, well, he did, but just only on 2 songs. So, um, I mean, we can kind of go over there's 2 different versions. Um, so, so obviously Don is on both albums. George Lynch is on the original, playing tracks 1 through 5, 9, and 10, and then plays all of the lead guitars on the 83 version. Peter Baltus from Udo and of course Accept played bass on tracks 1 through 4, 6 through 8, and 10. and then Juan Croucier played bass on tracks 5 and 9. So it's a little disjointed there, having two different bass players. But Juan Croucier played bass on the entire album on the '83 version, and then Mick Brown played drums on 1 through 5, 9 and 10 on the original, and Bobby Blotzer, uh, surprisingly from Rat, plays drums on tracks 6 through 8, whereas Mick Brown played drums in the entire album for '83. So it is re-recorded. They I don't believe they used any of the sessions from the original to redo this, but interestingly enough, the version of Paris is Burning is from December 1982. So it is, I believe, the official band by that point. So it's Don, George, Juan, and Mick on that Paris is Burning live recording. But yeah, I mean, you have valid points on all this. Like it's a little disjointed. It's basically taking a failed album and re-recording it to release in the States, and you know I have some different opinions on it that I'll talk about later. But there's two different versions, and um, I kind of wanted to say, like, so which version do you prefer?
The 83 version.
Okay, I think that's completely fair. I mean, I think
It's
overall,
recorded. It sounds better. Um, it almost seems to me. I mean, the 81 version sounds like a demo to me when you
yeah.
compare it. I mean, put it this way: there's like when Motley Crue's Too Fast for Love went from Leather Records to Electro Records. They remixed the album, much better sounding, but there's something about the first one that it's just as raw. Like both versions sound raw, but there's a little bit more um, bass in
Refinement.
the. It is exactly, it's refined. Whereas the first version, the 1981 version of Breaking the Chains, sounds like a raw demo, and
Hmm.
the new one in '83, or the re-release version in '83, much more polished. That's not to say that the production is polished, but it's a much more polished version that came out to the public. That's my opinion.
I mean, I for almost every aspect prefer '83. What I do like about the '81 version is I think Don's vocals. There's some interesting things he did there where, um, from what I understand, they had very limited time to record that album, and I think there's some kind of urgency there that is kind of expressed through the vocals, and it's interesting. I think like if you haven't listened to both, you can find the original in a few different places. I know YouTube has some stuff on it, so you might want to just Google that or YouTube it. I mean, if you haven't or don't have the original version of the album. But there are still some original pressings and that kind of stuff floating around there. So if you're a collector, it's an interesting curiosity for sure. But I think, yeah, we're both in agreement. The '83 version's the superior one.
Yeah, and mentioning the original versions available still out there. I bought the '83 version of Breaking the Chains on vinyl probably earlier this year or maybe the end of last year. I can't remember exactly.
Mhm.
Um, and it is absolutely a mint version. I paid mint price for it. It was like 35 bucks for me. But considering that, it still has all the original inner sleeve that had the old Electro Records information on it. Unless someone printed out exactly all the old shit, this is a pretty damn good copy from back from 1983.
Nice.
So yeah, it was pretty cool. All right, so we're at number 6.
For number 6, I have Lightning Strikes Again. Um, I think it's a really solid album. There is one song on there that I think is really funny. Um, there's two tracks that really stood out to me, and that was Standing on the Outside and Release Me. I think both of those are really solid. Now, Heart of Stone, Point of No Return, I remember In This Fire also I really enjoyed. So about 6 out of 10. Um, the others, they're good, but they just didn't stand out to me on the same level. That being said, I remember this. I remember, not the other. I remember that Don forgot that he had a song called "I Remember." Um, so um, this could be freaking Skinnerd. Like it sounds like Simple Man. Um, I mean, I don't know if you picked up on that, but like it sounds like Leonard Skinnerd.
I did not pick up on that. It may have been one of those where I was speeding through all the
Yeah.
songs.
Go back and listen to I Remember. This I remember. Not this I remember, but this incarnation of I remember. um this is my who's on first. So yeah, so check out that song and go back and listen to it. It's something. But overall, I think it's a really cool album.
That's my number 6 as well.
Okay.
So, um, for me, Lightning Strikes Again, the title was pretty appropriate because, from being, so late in the career, um, for Dokken, it really is recapturing a lot of the old, I guess, I don't want to say, um, magic, but it did pick up a lot of the old, chemistry, even though even though it's a different band. But there's something about it that you listen to and you say, "Oh, this sounds like classic Dokken," you know? Um, and I think that's the whole point of the title to me. I mean, you've got that eagle or phoenix that's on the front, the phoenix that harkens back to Beast from the East and Back for the Attack. So there was something about this album that made Dokken feel like, hey, this is very similar to what we did in the past. And they released it. And I mean, by this time, especially, this is 2008, this is the period of time where record sales were just tanking everywhere.
Mhm.
Um, th- this wasn't going to be a multi-platinum album, but I think had it been released back in the day, it would have definitely fit in nicely with the rest of the catalog. Um, as opposed to, when they hit the grunge era, they try to do all sorts of different things and they experimented here and there, and all of a sudden had different albums for a string of albums. This one is really, back to the original formula, and we they made it sound good and melodic and stuff like that. So, um, that's that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It is something that I kind of didn't think about, but yeah, it is a little bit of that lightning in a bottle, kind of popping its head up again. I think of his late career, this is definitely the best album. All right, so my number five, you've already talked about, is "Up from the Ashes." I tend to like it a bit more than you did. I thought "Crash and Burn" is a really cool song. "Down in Flames," I liked "1,000 Miles Away," "Forever," "Living a Lie," "Give It Up," "Stay," and "The Hunger." So overall, I kind of just enjoyed the album as a whole. I thought John Norm does a great job on guitar. The drums are fantastic. It's Mickey D on drums, and he's one of my favorite drummers. So I think for me it was maybe a little more fun than what you got out of it. Um, what's interesting to me is like I do agree with you. Like he can't. This was kind of like a sign that it wasn't as good as the stuff that preceded it for sure, right? Without the chemistry of the Dokken band, there is something lacking. So it does feel like a Don Dokken album in a way, even though it's clearly written to be a Dokken album. I mean, Mick Brown even has a writing credit on it, even though, they were, you know, out of sorts at the time, right? Um, so, I liked it more than you did, but I definitely see your point and agree with you on it just not having that same chemistry or power that the albums that preceded it had.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I totally understand that. I mean, a few weeks ago, I worked from home and I put this album on and I was listening to it, and I recall enjoying a few riffs here and there, but I felt as if it was just a like monotonous Dokken album. Monotonous only because it's basically playing in the background, so I wasn't paying too much attention to it. But when you hear a good riff, you hear a good riff, and you bop your head every, you're like, oh, this is pretty cool, you know. But like I couldn't go back to say I remember which song that was because I had listened to the whole thing in just kind of one big stream kind of thing, and didn't really pay attention to it. Although I looked at the album, I'm like, oh, this is not bad. At the time, I was like, better than I originally thought it was. And I think that's part of the issue for me is coming off of Back for the Attack, which is such a good album. This is the next thing you get in from Don Dokken in the line of succession.
Yes.
And it's a major disappointment in that regard. So I lived through that portion of it, and it's a lot different when you go back and you listen to it individually as something like the exercise that we're doing with it now.
Mhm.
It's very different because you're essentially in a weird way listening to it out of context.
Yeah.
And so things will always sound better in music kind of out of context. When if you listen to certain songs or certain groups, they'll have good songs on an album, right? And you sit there and say, oh, but this was such a, when if you experienced it in its original time, you would say, oh yeah, but that was, coming off of the three previous albums, this was a major disappointment.
Yeah, no,
S-
that's fair. Yeah.
still a great song. Like you isolate it by itself, whatever song we're talking about, it's still a great song. But in comparison to, you're like, whoa, you know. So that was what happened with me. I'm like, Dokken, I was just, I mean, I was a big fan of Dokken, and then I got into college, and then coming out of college, I joined the record store, and this is the album that pops up, and I'm like, it's like
Yeah.
this isn't Back for the Attack. I mean, Dokken stayed in the limelight somewhat because they released Beast from the East, the live album. So I'm like, oh, cool. That maybe they didn't break up. Or, this is good shit. And then you find out, oh, they broke up, and this came out, and like, this isn't Dokken. It's like wannabe. you know so I get what you're saying there. um for me though, number 5 is Dysfunctional. um and here's what I say about that. So again, talking about living the experience, right? So now Dawkins has been over at this point. They hadn't made an album since 1987 with Back for the Attack. Don Dokken had released the solo album Up from the Ashes in 1990. Um, and so the last thing you got from the band was Beast from the East, the double live album. Good album, good representation, good way to end it if that was what was the intention, right? And then the band reunites after the failure of Up for the Ashes, or Up from the Ashes, excuse me. The band reunites and they come up with Dysfunctional, completely apropos for many different reasons. The band was dysfunctional, had been for many, many, many years. And now you got this album that really, like you mentioned, is all over the place. Lots of different things here and there. Very quote unquote dysfunctional. However, for my point of view, it's not a bad album. It's a pretty good album. Um, it obviously the title says everything you need to know about what's going on in their career, in their lives at the time, but they were able to put together a pretty decent album when it came to Dysfunctional. Um, I got to listen to it. I was given a copy of it at the time. Um, Too High to Fly was pretty cool, but it wasn't, it wasn't. Um, what was that song? It wasn't Mr. Scary. It wasn't um, Kiss of Death. It wasn't, Dream Warriors, but it was something that was in line with the Dokken legacy.
Well,
And
there is a song that sounds like Mr. Scary with vocals on it on that album, and I'm trying to remember which one it is. Um, Long Way Home. It's a slowed down version of Mr. Scary with vocals.
also Long Way Home. Okay. I'll check out I'll check that one out again. Um, Again, like I said, this not a bad album. Um, for what it is, a reunion album, and you're coming in right at the height of the grunge era, and maybe even just on the downside, I guess if you could say, of the grunge era. So, you know, the next album after this, is Shadow Life, and yeah, boy. And so it's like we mentioned it the first time. It's way at the wrong time, and so Dysfunctional. It was their attempt at being relevant in an irrelevant time for them. I guess uh, how do you put that? You can't really put it in a better way. Glam metal, hair metal was not in favor. So they're trying to put out something that, you know, whatever can stick on an album. And it nothing stuck. But at the same time, it wasn't bad. It's just because nothing it was so all over the place, it didn't sound cohesive. So
Yeah. Oh, I mean, for the most part, I agree. I think it's still a fun album. It's just it's so strange, in their catalog, but it works.
right.
All right. So for my number four, it looks like our top three are probably going to be the same albums, maybe in a different order. But Breaking the Chains, I do seem to like it a bit more than you do. Um, but I'm coming in from a completely different perspective, right? So more listening to this in recent years, not being a fan in the 80s. um there's some stuff that like I the cheesiness works for me in a way. So Breaking the Chains, I think, is great. I love that song itself. I Can't See You, I think, is what probably one of the cheesier songs on the album, but I like it a lot. Seven Thunders, I think, is a really cool track. In the middle, Live to Rock is fun. Night Rider, Stick to Your Guns, Paris is Burning. I think they're all pretty fun songs overall. I like I mentioned earlier, I do prefer you know the U.S. version, the re-recorded 1983 version. Um, but different perspectives because I think the cheese is working for me more in hindsight than you probably enjoyed at the time, where the stuff that followed is a lot heavier, is a lot more serious, and more refined because it's not one guy putting together several musicians to put an album together to try to make it. Um, you know, by the time the next three albums come out, it's a band. So, yeah, I enjoy it quite a bit, but I can see why, if you're more focused on the next three albums that would come out, totally justifiable.
Right. No, I get that. And like you said, there's you have individual songs that are pretty cool. I like the song, "Live to Rock, Rock to Live." Doesn't sound bad. I like side to me actually side 2 is probably better overall. But there's the
Yeah,
cheese.
Felony sucks, and it's creepy.
There's let's
Like
not go there.
Felony and Young Girls, like we could leave off.
Well, so but the cheese factor, so it's funny because at the time that this album came out, I'm 14 years old. Um, but I didn't the album didn't come out to much fanfare. So that's the other thing too. You know, it didn't the video did not pick up much on MTV. Um,
I
I mean,
like the cheesy video
oh,
for
for
Breaking
Breaking
the
the Chains.
Chains. It's so
Yeah.
good. I
Like it's funny because there's a similarity in cheesiness between Breaking the Chains and Queen of the Reich from Queensryche. But Queen of the Reich, that song has so much balls to it that
Yeah.
it's a better song, so the video comes across better, you know?
I saw a video of Don talking about that video, and he was talking about how they cut in one of the producers' girlfriend at the time. She's in the video, and it's when he says like, um, she'll like something about she'll come back. She wants to try, and there's this really over dramatic girl in the background, like superimposed, while he's like laying on the bed with like the bathrobe or whatever the hell he's wearing in the video. It's so bad. And he goes, like, we're watching the video and we see that cut in, and he's like, well, who the hell is that?
Yeah. I mean, I tell you what, there was some fucking drugs and some bad videos in the '80s, man, let me tell you.
Oh man, I
Um,
love it.
but, like, so, think about, like I mentioned Queen of the Reich, cheesy, cheesy, cheesy video, right? However, the song is so good, right? Like, when you have these songs that are kinda like they're okay, when you listen to them by themselves, they sound good, right? And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden you put a video on and it's like, "Eesh," you just kill the song.
Yeah.
Like, Breaking the Chains, the problem with that and what makes it even cheesier is, he's literally breaking these chains off this
That's my
wall,
favorite
right?
part.
And here's the funny thing about it though, right? Like, you don't hear you don't see Don Dokken being the kind of guy who breaks the chains off the wall, right? Because he's like, breaking the chain. It's just it's so lightly sung
Yeah.
that you don't think he's got the strength to rip this fucking chain off the wall.
But I like that they're like when they rip them off, there's explosions, like it's a Power Rangers or something. And then when Mick gets released, he has his drumsticks. He can't carry his drums with him, obviously. So you got Jeff and you have George playing their guitars, right? And then Mick's just in the background banging his sticks together while walking behind. It's my favorite. It's cinema. It's my favorite part.
Well, yeah. So Breaking the Chains has its moments, but you like it more than me, and I get that because again, taking it out of context makes it probably better in that
Yeah.
regards. Um, and again, I wasn't like it's not like I didn't like cheese because of course I liked Kiss throughout the '80s, so
Fair enough. Yeah.
but what was it Up All Night or Ooh All Night or whatever it is. Um, so there's that, but um, it is what it is. Anyway, um, Breaking the Chains was number 4 for you. Number 4 for me is Erase the Slate. Um, where was this in 1995? Because this album starts off killer. It's just got a lot of good songs. Um, the first song, "Erase the Slate," has that little Led Zeppelin intro, like John Bonham, but it
Yeah.
goes into a killer riff. Um, you know. Then you got, like you mentioned earlier, Maddest Hatter. You know, there's a thing about Dokken that's always had this like Beatles-esqueness to it, you know, and they've pulled it off at different times. Like they, you know, when they play live, they did that acoustic album. What was it called? One Live Night, and great. And they pulled off Nowhere Man with all four of them singing. I mean, they truly can harmonize. That's the thing, that those four guys have a chemistry that nobody else in Don Dokken's world can compare to. And so their voices are just magic together. Um, so Erase the Slate, you know, that Mattis Hatter intro is pretty cool in that regards. So it's just, where was this album, you know, 4 years earlier? Because they had to go through Dysfunctional, and then they went through that fucking Shadows Life. That was just it was just terrible, man. Or Shadow Life, you know, and then they
It
get to
doesn't
this
matter.
one.
Nobody knows.
You know, so you know, they're putting out an album every 2 years, and they get to this one, and it's like, wow. Like, to me, that should have been the one called Lightning Strikes Again, because that they
Yeah.
fucking. But again, the record industry was in such turmoil. Now, not as much turmoil as it is, you know, later on, but you know, record sales were different, and bands of their ilk were not you know, there was no shining light on them. So it was going to be tough. But that album, if it comes out in 95, their career probably gets prolonged. I mean, mind you, it didn't go anywhere, but Shadow Life doesn't happen if this album comes out in 95. I don't think, because it's a good album, you know. So you could put Erase the Slate and then follow it up with Dysfunctional. Okay, I can see that. You know, but it's all out of whack, man. They should change they should change the release dates on these. So
Yeah.
I,
Let's be revisionist history. Yeah.
of course,
Um, yeah. I mean, you definitely like it more than I do, but I still think it's a solid album.
yeah. All right, what do you got for number 3?
Number 3, I've got Back for the Attack. Um, I mean, this is really pretty solid album from beginning to end. I don't like everything on it, but that being said, Kiss of Death is an awesome opener. Mr. Scary's great track. Such a cool instrumental song. So Many Tears, Dream Warriors is an absolute classic. I'm a big fan of the early Freddy Krueger movies. I like 1 through 5, and I like New Nightmare a lot too. But yeah, like you know, if somebody asked me what the main, like the big three horror franchises, what's my favorite? It is Nightmare on Elm Street, then Halloween, then Friday the 13th. So don't no, tell me what you think. Like, what's your favorite horror franchise? Um, but yeah, I really like the album as a whole. I think Prisoner has such a cool like opening riff. You know, Standing in the Shadows, Heaven Sent, all of it's really good stuff. Of the three like really classic Dokken albums, this is my least favorite, but that's by a very small margin.
Wow, that's a completely different take than what I'm going to come up with.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
What I am noticing on this, so I'm not going to talk about it because it doesn't sit at number 3 for me. Is and we could talk about this a little bit here. Don Dokken has come out lately. He's a fucking curmudgeon, dude. Um,
He's grumpy as shit.
he's fucking grumpy old man, and I understand it. I get it, you know. But to sit there and say that he lost millions because he shared the publishing, you know what? Get a fucking grip on reality, my man. Okay, because this album that you're talking about, Back for the Attack, it's not written in a situation where they gave each other an equal share. Okay, like Kiss of Death, Lynch, Dokken, Pilson. Okay, so there's no Mick Brown, but Mick Brown and Lynch and Pilson is on Prisoner. Dokken is nowhere to be seen on Prisoner. He's not on Mr. Scary. Okay. He's not on Dream Warriors. He's not on Sleepless Night. So what the fuck is he talking about? Just because you had one album, I think it was Under Lock and Key, that they decided they wanted to share all the writing credits together. You know what? Kudos for them for doing that because it's a damn fucking good album.
Mm-hmm.
And so you should do that. But, break back for the attack, to sit well, just in general, there's all this curmudgeon shit that he's doing now where I lost millions of dollars. Bro, he has his own revisionist fucking history in his mind, thinking that he wrote every fucking great Dokken song. So anyway,
It is fun to listen to. Like I've listened to a super cut of George talking about something and then Don talking about something, or vice versa, about the same subject, and their memories of of those things are so different. And then you listen to Jeff Pilson, and it's somewhere in between. He's like more rational version of the two stories.
All right. Well, number 3 for me is Under Lock and Key. Um, that song, I mean, that album just when it came out, it was just like they had just come off of the success of Tooth and Nail, the success of Alone Again, as a big MTV video hit, and they went for it, and they came out with a fucking great album. I mean, hit after hit after hit on this. Unchained Night, The Hunter, In My Dreams, Lightning Strikes Again. Even Slipping Away was a pretty decent song. It's Not Love. That's when it kind of, those first 6 songs are pretty good. And then he goes into Jaded Heart, Don't Lie to Me, Will the Sunrise, Until the Living End. It's a pretty damn good album. It's a platinum selling album. So, this is the second in the string of 3 that were platinum. So it has a special place in my heart because I remember, seeing the video, especially for I think it's Unchained Tonight, or no, it's Not Love. Is the one where they're on the like the float and they're playing in the streets. I think It's Not Love. Um, that's that's classic 80s shit right there.
Mm-hmm.
And this album was the pinnacle. I mean, so Back for the Attack, as good as it was, for whatever reason, you had a sense that it was not going to continue for whatever reason. It was really weird, but like this album here, Under Lock and Key, was like the height of their career. So that's number 3 for me.
Okay. Okay. My number 2 is Tooth and Nail. Um, you know, uh, it's a front to backer, honestly. Tooth and Nail, Into the Fire, Alone Again, all of them, you know, absolutely classic songs. Without Warning, Just Got Lucky, Heartless Heart, Don't Close Your Eyes, When Heaven Comes Down, Bullets to Spare, Turn on the Action. I don't think there's a bad song among them. Um, I think, the pacing is great. The energy is fantastic. I love the connection with Dream Warriors. Um, the movie, not the song, but the movie. Um, I think it's awesome. Like Into the Fire is in uh Dream Warriors the movie. That's Nightmare on Elm Street 3, by the way, if you're not familiar with horror films. Um so I mean it's such a good album. Like I think it's um probably the breaking point for the band. Is that a correct assessment? Like, at this point, it's their second album, right? Or
Mhm.
third if you view it as like the re-recording being a different album, but second album. And they had to fight and scratch and claw to get this album, and it works. The chemistry is you know it's the first time it's a band chemistry, right? So it's really solid, and to me, it's like like this is the first Dokken album as a band Dokken.
Right, I get that, and I agree with you. Um, Tooth and Nail. I mean, when it first came out, and I got a copy of it, don't remember how. I think I mentioned it to you or mentioned to my wife. I have no idea how I got a lot of my shit back in the day. I didn't steal it, that's for sure. I wasn't that kind of kid, but um, like, I have a lot of stuff from back then. I'm like, "Where did I get all this from?" So, I don't remember. I mean, I didn't have a job, so I guess, my grandmother just was like my fucking cocaine dealer, just giving me album after album, you know? She so anyhow, not that I ever did cocaine because I never did. Um, Tooth and Nail is definitely a front to backer, like you mentioned. It is. I mean, I listened to the crap out of this album when it first came out, and I just listened to it over and over again. Um, like you said, Tooth and Nail, just that whole sequence of songs. I remember this album very very well. My favorite song on this album, the two songs, "Into the Fire" and "Alone Again," big hits on MTV. "Alone Again" is just for being recorded in the '80s and being recorded by um, who produced it by Tom Werman. It's overproduced to some extent, but it still sounds really good and it sounds relatively fresh. The only thing that doesn't make it sound fresh or a little dated is the drums. But everything else sounds really good to it. Um, very, very good album. Like I said, in 1984, I'm listening to this left and right for a long time.
I mean, yeah, I wasn't born, um, but but
No, you weren't.
I'm sure my sister was rocking it.
Uh, how old is your sister
She
compared
was
to
born
you?
in '84, so
I'm pretty sure she wasn't either.
she was like 9 months old at that point, so I'm sure she was just like, into the fire. Um,
Oh my god. You weren't born. No, you weren't. All right. So we kind of know what your number one is.
All right, so my number one is Under Lock and Key. To me, it is the most cohesive, most solid Dokken album. Unchained the Night, In My Dreams, Lightning Strikes Again, It's Not Love, Don't Lie to Me. Those are all my favorites on the album. Then The Hunter, Slipping Away, Jaded Heart, Will the Sunrise, and or Till the Living End. I think are all really good tracks too. I think for me one of the biggest things is I think this is the performance where Dawn has the strongest vocals. Um, and then there's a solid cohesiveness to this band at this point. I think it's easy to view it in two ways. Like so, for back for the attack, there is a little bit of what you said earlier, where you said something along the lines of you could feel it was going to end. Um, that's like kind of going out on a blaze of glory because it is such a good album. But at the same time, there's something more positive here that I can latch onto a bit more. With the overall production, the sound, the quality of the vocals, the cohesiveness of the band, and then the songwriting itself. So, like, I'll mention, one of the songs on here is in my big four. But I won't say what yet. I think it's a solid front to backer, like the entire album.
I mean, I agree with you. It's a great album. Um, so for me, I guess it's more about like for Back for the Attack and Tooth and Nail were kind of flip flop for me,
Mhm.
because Tooth and Nail was the first one for me. So that tends to stick in my mind. It tends to stick in my heart. Very similar to Ride the Lightning from Metallica is my first album, so it'll always be better to me than Master of Puppets.
Yeah.
Um, but um, it's one of those things where I try to sit here and go, okay, what? I mean, it's hard to go wrong with any of those three albums, because all three are so good, but you can see that there's an improvement from Tooth and Nail to Under Lock and Key. I mean, it's major sound improvement.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the songs are just good, front to back. I mean, Tooth and Nails is pretty much a front to backer. So you got, for the most part, 2.5 albums. Because when you get to Back for the Attack, it's really good listen front and back. However, there are hits and misses along the
There's a
way,
couple
and
misses on that
and
one.
it's
Yeah.
and it's too long. The whole idea that, oh well, now we have 74 minutes to play with. Now we have to make a 74-minute album. No, you don't have, just because you can put 66 minutes on an album doesn't mean you have to.
Yes.
So um it is one of those things. Number one for me is Back for the Attack. Um, Different from what you had mentioned before. It's this. I like the heaviness of it. I think I think that it has a little bit more of the heaviness that Tooth and Nail had, like Tooth and Nail and Just Got Lucky. Those were kind of a little heavier per se, um, than say the stuff that's on Under Lock and Key. Under Lock and Key's great songs. The heaviness, except for maybe Lightning Strikes Again, is not the same as the stuff for me that's on Back for the Attack and Tooth and Nail. And when you think about the heaviness of Tooth and Nail, like you mentioned, we've got Tooth and Nail itself. Just Got Lucky. Don't Close Your Eyes. Pretty quick song.
Yeah.
Um, when Heaven Comes Down, it's kind of like just a heaviness to it. But there, even though it's Dokken, um, Into the Fire, I think it's just the way it's recorded, because there's all these hard hitting beats of ding, 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 and it's extended. Whereas, you know, the really good sounding recording of Under Lock and Key, but the songs to me are not necessarily heavy.
Yeah,
Anyway,
there's more. I would say Under Lock and Key is more attitude,
yeah,
and then the other two albums are a little heavier.
right. So for
Yeah.
me, I mean, when you open a song with a song like "Kiss of Death," oh my god, that was outstanding. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I think it could have probably gone into it. Like, they should have put "Burning Like a Flame" second, right after "Kiss of Death," instead of "The Prisoner," because that kind of keeps the momentum going when you're listening to it. But I understand, that's what they did, that's what they chose. Can't change that. But I mean, there's some really good songs in there. "Standing in the Shadows," "Heaven Sent," "Mr. Scary" is an incredible instrumental. "Burning Like a Flame." And then when you get through that second half of the album, it's it's not the greatest second half of the album, but there's some good songs, some good riffs in there. But then, when you get to the end of "Sleepless Night," the album's supposed to be over. And then they threw on "Dream Warriors,"
He
because
has like 8 songs about gypsies. Like he's got "Cry of the Gypsy," "Gypsy," and there's like a couple other songs where the lyric is about a gypsy. Like it's
think
a
about
it's
it.
a
There's
running theme.
it,
Mhm.
it there's a lot of flames in his songs.
Yeah,
A
right.
lot of, obviously a lot of love, a lot of night stuff, and night and gypsies. Yeah, it's in there. A lot of heaven stuff too.
Yeah.
You know, he's an interesting cat. Curmudgeon, that's what he is. So for me, um, Dream, no, Dream Warriors. For me, Back for the Attack is a super solid album, and it's my number one in this particular exercise that we're doing. Dawkins worst to first.
Well, we had a lot of crossover.
because all those albums were shit back back in the early 2000s.
That's true. We were within like our 11 and 12 were the same albums, but they were just swapped. 9, 10, and 13 were the same, and then our 2 and 6 were the same. So I mean, that's pretty crazy. We like we've mentioned before, we never talk about this before. I think you and I both knew what our number ones were from prior conversation, but that was the only thing that we knew. So,
Right.
yep.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, there's no point in us planning this out because it's spontaneous conversation. You
Yep.
know. All right, so we are up to the big four Dokken songs. Now, I will preface this: if someone decides they want to go all the way back to the early days of this show, they're going to find a program in which we did Dokken versus Rat, if I'm not mistaken.
Did
And
we?
yes,
Wow, I don't
was it?
remember.
I don't know if it was Dokken versus Rat.
I think we
Uh,
did Rat versus. Oh God, I remember really loving Rat and being like, I want to listen to them again. Um,
wow, that wasn't sarcastic at all. No, let me pull it up here real quick so I can explain it to our fans out there. Um, really, 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 really early on, we did um, a hair metal thing. Yes, it was Tooth and Nail versus Out of the Cellar. So it was a
I
combined. It
wonder
was
what my opinion of Tooth and Nail was back then. I probably have a very different view now.
well, if anybody wants to find out what Chris's point of view on Tooth and Nail was back then, listen to episode 94. So we did a Dawkins Big Four, but it was combined with the Rat. So there was like 8 songs. So I'm gonna basically say we're starting this fresh.
Do you
Um,
have that Big Four? Like, do you have?
I have it right
Um,
in front of me.
okay, let's do this, and then tell me
Oh, I
what
don't have
mine.
yours. I don't have
Oh, you
yours.
you don't have mine? Oh
I
no. Okay.
for whatever reason, I always put mine down. But when I can probably look in the paper, I have a giant stack of papers. People
Mhm.
that So, and anybody listening out there, I print out every one of our episodes, and I keep notes as we talk during the show, and I have it somewhere. I have that paper,
All
but I
right.
didn't put it on my spreadsheet.
Next episode, we need to revisit this, and I want to know what my opinion was of
Okay.
my Big Four at the time versus now.
Well, I know I'm looking at there's one song that changed for me on my big four.
Okay.
So since you went first, you get to close out the show. I'm going to go first now on the big four. So number 4 for me is Unchained the Night from Under Lock and Key. Um, really good song. Number 3 for me is Into the Fire from Tooth and Nail. What was I going to say about that song? Probably played constantly over and over and over again on my cassette deck in my car for the longest time. Um, so it's funny switching between that and Metallica. Well, no, in 1984, I wasn't listening to Metallica. That's right. I didn't become a Metallica fan until 85.
Okay.
So here's that. Um, Probably a lot of Bark at the Moon from Ozzy at the time. All right, number 2, Alone Again. Love that song. Love it. And then number 1, Kiss of Death. Just an outstanding song. So my change was Unchained the Night. The other 3 songs are exactly in the same position as they were uh, on episode 94. Which,
Okay.
if you think about when we were doing episodes back then, episode 94 came out in 2000, the 2021, because we did almost a show a week for the longest time. So,
My bad, people.
so I would say either the end of 2021 or maybe the beginning of 2022.
Okay.
So, but not a big deal. You know what? I thought about it afterwards. You know what? It'll be an interesting topic to talk about that we're duplicating. This is the first and only one we've ever duplicated.
Interesting. Yeah, and again, my opinions have changed on this band, so um we'll see. Okay, so my number 4 is Into the Fire. Love the song. It's a cool track to see in the Nightmare on Elm Street movie we talked about. It's a great song as a whole. My number 3 is Breaking the Chains. I think part of that is due to the music video, but also I just really like the track. I think it's great. My number 2 is crossover with you, Alone Again. I think that is definitely one of the best Dokken songs. I really like singing that one karaoke and just having a lot of fun with that one. It's an awesome song. And then my number 1 is Lightning Strikes Again. It's the heaviest song off of that album, and it's just one of those that I just really like. I think it's a absolutely classic song. So yeah, 2 songs I think we crossed over.
Yes, we had 2 songs that crossed over, "Alone Again" and "Into the Fire."
Very cool. All right. Well, I'm very curious what I thought.
All right, so what I'm doing is if anyone out there listens, and I don't know how Spotify does this. I listen to podcasts on Apple Podcasts, so I am this thing transcribes it for us automatically. Super cool.
Oh, cool.
All right. So I'm looking right here. It says, all right, my number 4. So this has to be you because it's not my number 4. Lightning Strikes Again.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right. And so that's now your number 1. So it's moved up. It's moved up.
Okay.
um, then my number 3 is Into the Fire. So
Okay.
that dropped down. That dropped down for you.
No, it went
uh,
up. It was my number 4 today.
oh well, no, it went
Yeah.
down because it was 3 before, and now it went down to 4.
Oh, okay.
It
Well,
was
then what's
number
my number 4?
I'm Lightning Strikes Again.
Okay. Yeah, but all right. So Lightning Strikes Again was my number 1 today.
Today. So it went up to number 1 today.
Yes. And
Okay.
Into the Fire went
Into the
up.
Fire. No, went down to number 4 from previously being number 3.
Oh, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. We're on the same
Okay.
page.
All right. We're on that page. You flip the
Yeah.
page.
Yeah.
You want the
It's
new
late.
book?
It's
All
late.
right. It is late. It is late. All right. Let's see here. Number 2, what were we talking about? All right, number 2 is Breaking the Chains.
Okay.
So that has also gone down from the last time. So because you were number 2 before, now it's number 3. Okay, and then
I'm wildly consistent here.
oh yeah, you are. Okay, so and then we started talking about the dumb video. All
Okay.
right.
I'm a broken record. Okay.
Well, mine wasn't any different. Mine was exactly the same. So all right, and number 1 for you was Dream Warriors.
Wow. Okay. So Dream Warriors dropped from number 1 off the list.
Same thing for me. It was number 4 on my list and dropped off completely.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's a interesting take on what we did. It came out in April 9th of 2022. So it is literally about 3.5 years old.
So this is a telling thing. Okay. So if really all you know is a song because you've heard it as a single or something, that doesn't mean that that's going to be what you like the most. If you give stuff more of a chance and you go and listen to it, I guarantee you'll find things that you liked that you never liked before. And so it's very interesting to see that Dream Warriors, probably just from the merit of being such a major hit for them and being associated with the movie and everything like that. That was my number one at the time, but now that I know all the music better, it's not even on my list.
And it's funny too, for me, I would sit there and say, I almost had it on this list this time, but I looking at um the songs from Under Lock and Key, I'm like, man, this is a pretty good album, right? Um Obviously, because you had it number one, I had it number three. Um so there's songs that you just like, man, this is a good song, this is a good song, this is a good song. And you listen to them all, and for you, like you mentioned, when you haven't listened too deeply, it's understandable how you can go with something that's you've heard of before because it was in the movie and this and anything. For me, it was more along the lines of, it was so catchy that it was, for the longest time, it was one of those songs that just did not leave my stream of consciousness. I
Yeah.
mean, and I'm not saying because it's from 1987, but it's one of those things when I listen to Doc, and that's the one song that will go in and out of my head all the time, just because that chorus is so catchy. That's an earworm for
Hmm.
me. And that's why it was, at that time, it was probably my number four, or yeah, at the time, because of that, you know. So
I would guess it's
interesting.
still probably in my top 10, but it's just like I like the other songs more now.
I
So
would I would think it's in my top 10 too. Just it's a really good song. I mean, yeah, because my top three was exactly the same. All right. Well, that brings an end to this dynamic episode of Debating Metal. Um, don't forget to click like or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please leave a comment so we can figure out, what you guys like and dislike. I mean, because if you let us know what's going on, we'll work with you.
all right. And don't forget, you can interact with us on Facebook, Instagram, and on X, or send us an email to debatingmetal@gmail.com. YouTube viewers, click subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when we post a new show. And remember, tune into the next exciting episode where we'll spark up another exciting metal debate. On behalf of Kenneth and myself, stay safe and always turn it up to 11.
See ya.